बर मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सलावत। अऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम। बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम। यासीन वल फुरक़ानिल हकीम। इन्नका लमिनल मुरसलीन अला सिरातिम मुस्तक़ीम। तंज़ीलल अज़ीज़िर रहीम। लितुन्ज़िर क़ौमम मा उन्ज़िर आबाउहुम फ़हुम गाफ़िलून। लक़द हक़्क़ल क़ौलु अला अक्सरिहिम फ़हुम ला युमिनून। इन्ना जअलना फ़ी आनाक़िहिम अग़लालन फ़हिया इलल अज़क़ानि फ़हुम मुक़महून। वजअलना मिन बैनि अयदीहिम सद्दन व मिन ख़ल्फ़िहिम सद्दा फ़अग़शयनाहुम फ़हुम ला युबसिरून। वसवाउन अलैहिम अअन्ज़रतहुम अम लम तुन्ज़िरहुम ला युमिनून। इन्नमा तुन्ज़िरु मन इत्तबअ-ज़्ज़िक्र व ख़शियर रहमान बिल-ग़ैब फ़बश्शिरहु बिमग़फ़िरतिन व अज्रिन करीम। इन्ना नहनु नुह्यिल मौता व नक्तुबु मा क़द्दमू व आसारहुम व कुल्ल शैइन अहसैनाहु फ़ी इमामिन मुबीन। वज़रिब लहुम मसलन अस्हाबल क़रियह इज़ जाअहल मुरसलून। इज़ अरसलना इलैहिमुल इस्नैनि फ़कज़्ज़बूहुमा फ़अज़्ज़ज़ना बिसालिसिन फ़क़ालू इन्ना इलैकुम मुरसलून। क़ालू मा अंतुम इल्ला बशरुम मिस्लुना वमा अंज़लर रहमानु मिन शै इन अंतुम इल्ला तकज़िबून। क़ालू रब्बुना यअलमु इन्ना इलैकुम लमुरसलून वमा अलैना इल्लल बलागुल मुबीन। क़ालू इन्ना तय्यरना बिकुम लइन लम तंतहू लनरजुमन्नकुम वला यमस्सन्नकुम मिन्ना अज़ाबुन अलीम। क़ालू ताइरुकुम मअकुम अइन ज़ुक्किरतुम बल अंतुम क़ौमुम मुस्रिफ़ून। वजाअ मिन अक़सल मदीनति रजुलुन यसअ क़ाला या क़ौम इत्तबिउल मुरसलीन। इत्तबिउ मन ला यसअलुकुम अजरन वहुम मुहतदून। वमा लिया ला आबुदुल्लज़ी फ़तरनी व इलैहि तुरजऊन। अअत्तख़िज़ु मिन दूनिही आलिहतन इन युरिदनिर रहमानु बिज़ुर्रिन ला तुग़नि अन्नी शफ़ाअतुहुम शय्यन वला तुनक़िज़ून। इन्नी इज़न लफ़ी ज़लालिम मुबीन। इन्नी आमन्तु बिरब्बिकुम फ़स्मऊन। क़ील उद्ख़ुलिल जन्नह क़ाला या लैत क़ौमी यअलमून बिमा ग़फ़र ली रब्बी वजअलनी मिनल मुकरमीन। वमा अंज़लना अला क़ौमिही मिन बअदिही मिन जुन्दिन मिनस समाए वमा कुन्ना मुनज़िलीन। इन कानत इल्ला सयहतन वाहिदतन फ़इज़ा हुम ख़ामिदून। या हसरतन अलल इबाद मा यातीहिम मिर रसूलिन इल्ला कानू बिही यस्तहज़िऊन। अलम यरऊ कम अहलकना क़ब्लहुम मिनल क़ुरूनि इन्नहुम इलैहिम ला यरजिऊन। व इन कुल्लुन लम्मा जमीउन लदैना मुहज़रून। व आयतुल लहुमुल अर्ज़ुल मैतह अहयैनाहा व अख़रजना मिनहा हब्बन फ़मिन्हु याकुलून। وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون. والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم. لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر والليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون. وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين. وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون. وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين. وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقهم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون. ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون. قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون. فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون. إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون. سلام قوما من رب رحيم. وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم. ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون. هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون. اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون. ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون. ولو نشاء لمسخناهم अला मकानतिहिम फमस्तताउ मुज़िय्यन वला यरजिऊन वमा नुअम्मिरुहु नुनक्किसुहु फिल खल्क़ अफला याक़िलून वमा अल्लमनाहु अश्शि'रा वमा यंबग़ी लहु इन हुवा इल्ला ज़िक्रुन व क़ुरआनुम मुबीन लियुन्ज़िरा मन काना हय्यन व यहिक़्क़ल क़ौलु अलल काफ़िरीन अवलम यरौ अन्ना खलक़ना लहुम मिम्मा अमिलत अयदीना अनआमन फहुम लहा मालिकून वज़ल्ललनाहा लहुम फमिन्हा रकूबुहुम वमिन्हा याकुलून वलहुम फ़ीहा मनाफ़िउ व मशारिब अफ़ला यशकुरून वत्तख़ज़ू मिन दूनिल्लाहि आलिहतन लअल्लहुम युनसरून ला यस्ततीऊना नसरहुम वहुम लहुम जुन्दुन मुहज़रून वला यहज़ुनका क़ौलुहुम इन्ना नअलमु मा युसिर्रूना व मा युअलिनून अवलम यरल इंसानु अन्ना खलक़नाहु मिन नुत्फ़तिन फ़इज़ा हुम ख़सीमुम मुबीन वज़रब लना मसलन व नसिया ख़ल्क़ह क़ाला मन युह्यिल इज़ामा व हिया रमीम क़ुल युह्यीहा अल्लज़ी अंशअहा अव्वल मर्रह व हुवा बिकुल्लि ख़ल्क़िन अलीम अल्लज़ी जअल लकुम मिनश्शजरिल अख़ज़रि नारा फ़इज़ा अंतुम मिन्हु तूक़िदून अवलैसल्लज़ी ख़लक़स्समावाति वल अर्ज़ बिक़ादिरिन अला अन यख़्लुक़ा मिस्लहुम बला वहुवल ख़ल्लाक़ुल अलीम इन्नमा अम्रुहु इज़ा अरादा शय्अन अन यक़ूला लहु कुन फ़यकून फ़सुब्हानल्लज़ी बियदिही मलकूतु कुल्लि शय्इन व इलैहि तुरजऊन सदक़ल्लाहुल अलीयुल अज़ीम व सदक़ रसूलुहुल करीम। सलावत। एक सूरह फ़ातिहा मरहूम के लिए इरसाल फरमाएं।
बर मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सलावत।
जिस दम नगीने ख़ातमे पैगंबरा गिरा, जिस दम नगीने ख़ातमे पैगंबरा गिरा, रौनक उठी ज़मी से इमाम ज़मा गिरा, गिरने पे सब गिरो लिए बर्छियाँ गिरा, है ना उन जफ़ाओं पे भी आसमां गिरा। ज़हरा से पूछिए ये कलक नूरे ऐन का, तपना ज़मी का और तड़प ना हुसैन का, तपना ज़मीं का और तड़पना हुसैन का। मुश्ताक़ सैर ज़िबहा बड़े अफसरान की, कातिल कई खड़े हुए आकर करीब करीब। कोई पुकारा कोई बोला भी नहीं, अब देर क्या है सजदे में रख लेने दो जबी। आवाज दी उमर ने है गर्दन ढले हुए, कातिल पुकारा कभी है खुली हुई। कातिल पुकारा कभी है खुली हुई। सब थम गए मगर न थमा शिमरे बादल जहीम। सर पीटने की जाहिरा का उस जगह कदम, सीना दबा तो और भी तड़पे शाहे उमा। शोरे फुगा सुनाई सी हालत में दाम बदाम। कातिल से पूछा देख किधर गुल ये होता है हुसैन कह के कोई रन में रोता है हुसैन कह के कोई रन में रोता है। वो बोला कोई होगा मैं देखूं भला किधर, अब तेग पर निगाह है शहरक पे है नजर। हाँ जब सवार होने लगा था मैं सीने पर, सैदानी एक खेमे से निकली थी नंगे सर। उस दम हमारी फौज में तो ईद होती है, मुझको यकीन है ये वही बीबी रोती है। मुझको यकीन है ये वही बीबी रोती है। शह बोले और कोई नहीं ये बहन बहन, आशिक बहन हुसैन की तशना बहन बहन। बोली बोली हमारी प्यार में माँ का चलन बहन, बलवा कहाँ कहाँ ये मेरी खस्तातन बहन। कातिल पुकारा आगे भी बाहर ये आए थे, शह बोले जा से नाले अकबर ने खाई थी। शह बोले जा से नाली अकबर ने खाई थी। आगे है वो मुकाम के गश होंगे मोमिनीन, ये सामने हुसैन है वो ज़ैनबे हज़ी। गर्दन पे तेग दिल में सीना सीने पे लई, ज़ैनब ये हाल देखती है और बस नहीं। ज़ैनब ये हाल देखती है और बस नहीं। ना रहमो ना महरों का ना महरमों का ध्यान, ना पर्दे का होश है, ये सब लहू का जोश है, उल्फत का जोश है। ये सब लहू का जोश है, उल्फत का जोश है। ऐ शिमर पास भाई के जुआऊं तू कहे, जख्मों से जलती रे छुड़ाऊं जो तू कहे। चादर बदन के नीचे बिछाऊं जो तू कहे। बेकल है सर मैं आके उठाऊं जो तू कहे। पानी तो यहाँ मिलेगा ना जरा के जाए को, आंसू छिड़क के होश में लाऊंगी भाई को, आंसू छिड़क के होश में लाऊंगी भाई को। ऐ शिम्र में गले से लगा लूँ तो ज़ेबा कर, भाई से मिल के खेमे में जालूँ तो ज़ेबा कर, कुछ दर्द अपने दिल का सुना लूँ तो ज़ेबा कर। क़िबला को सैयद को क़िबला रू में लेटा लूँ तो ज़ेबा कर, पानी तो भूखे प्यासे को ए बदखिसाल दे, है वक्त ज़ेबा आँखों पे कपड़ा तो डाल दे, है वक्त ज़ेबा आँखों पे कपड़ा तो डाल दे। जिस दम नगीने खाता में पैगंबरां गिरा।
Salawat. I want to introduce Dr. Beg's oldest son, Dr. Mansoor Beg is here. He wants to say a few words about his dad.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। बहुत थोड़े से अल्फाज। Thank you for coming to my father, Soyem Majlis, my mother, sister, and our whole family. Sorry. I'm very grateful for your prayers and support. We thank God for the many years He granted my father. He worked hard and devoted his life to his family and community. Baitul Qaim, where we are gathered today, was originally a dream. He worked closely with a number of you to make it a reality. From the conversations we have had with you over the last few days, we've heard that my father touched your lives in many ways, big and small. We are grateful for all that he was able to do and the great example he has set for us. Inshallah, we'll follow in his footsteps. Thank you for joining us.
صل على محمد وآله اللهم صل رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Please recite another Surah Fatiha for Marhoom Mirza Ather Beg Ibn Manzoor Hassan Beg. Surah Fatiha. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين. الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is Soyem Majlis for the Soyem of Marhoom Dr. Ather Beg. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to elevate the status of Marhoom, give him a place in the proximity of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam. And on the same note, we continue to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide patience and solace to the bereaved family for the loss that they have suffered. Indeed, losing a fatherly figure, regardless of how old or young, is devastating on the kids and the children, an irreplaceable loss, and of course, a figure who shapes your life. Of course, many community members over here have had fond memories of Marhoom. And I spoke to Maulana Razi Jafar today and informed him of Marhoom's passing away. And of course, he was in shock as well, as he had had many years of interactions with him. And the first immediate thing that he mentioned, which I was already planning on mentioning about Marhoom, is that ever since I started reciting Majalis over here, there was not a Majlis that he would be attending and I would not get a photo of that Majlis. And when it was not the digital or smartphones, he would bring his regular camera. He would come right in front, he would take a picture, and he'd make sure that I get that picture. Go to get the pictures printed out, and then next time when I see him, he would give it to me. And I have all of those saved, of course, from many, many years that I've been reciting Majalis here, or at least I can remember for the last 16 years now. And then, of course, the digital world and then the smartphones came in, and he would come in, take a click with his smartphone, and then he would make sure that he would share that picture with us. And these are, of course, fond memories that have long-lasting impact. Just a small gesture, nothing big, but that was something which was trademarked for Marhoom. I'm sure there are many other things that are trademarked for him that are far more outreaching and beyond our imagination. But this was something that I think many of the scholars, I'm just a student, but many of the scholars who've attended or have recited Majalis here, they can all attest to the fact that Marhoom would always take their pictures and always provide them with the memory of reciting a Majlis Azza over here. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I recited these ayat from Surah Mulk, the first two initial verses. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins by glorifying himself. He said, Tabarakalladhi biyadihil mulk. Glory to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Urdu mein karenge, ba barakat hai wo zaat. Glory be to God, the one in whose possession is mulk, or whatever you want to translate the word mulk as. Definitely does not refer to a country. Rather, Maliki Yawmiddin, everything that is in the possession of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, تَبَارَكَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ الْمُلْكُ وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. And if that first sentence was not enough to make you understand, he said, he is qadir, meaning he has control over everything. And then comes the very next ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala awakens our conscience. He says, الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِتَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. He created maut, death. He created hayat, life. And right after that, did not have a long pause. He said, لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ, so that he can test, لِتَبْلُوَكُمْ, so that he can test أَيُّكُمْ, which one of you has the best of the actions. Did not say أَيُّكُمْ أَكْثَرُ عَمَلًا, which one of you have the most amount of actions. Did not talk about the quantity of the actions, rather spoke about the quality of the actions. With that said, a couple of things regarding this ayat, and inshallah, similar things that you hear usually in Isala Sawab Majlis, for until, of course, the time of namaz. There are a few things that need to be understood over here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala considers maut and hayat to be his creations. Well, regarding hayat, life, you can say that's a physical thing. So it has to be created. Maut, which is sometimes translated as lack of hayat or adame hayat, that means something which is adam, madum, which is lacking, meaning it's non-existent. When something is non-existent, can it be created? That is the question. But God, because he's saying, الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ, he has created maut, he has created death, which tells us, leads us to believe that there is a reality called death that exists. Now, of course, you and I, if we were to ask this question, we would attest to the same fact that yes, life is this. I see you, you see me, I'm living, so-and-so is 10 years old, another person is 20, 30, 90, 100. This is life. This is how we look at and we say, well, this person is alive. That is life. And then that person, when he passes away, we consider that to be maut and the end of it. But the creation cannot be end. That's the point that is being made over here. Something which is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have to be an end or ma'doom or non-existent. You might be able to speak about the reality of the life, that life exists. What is the essence of this life? Many people have a variety of answers. What is the essence of life? For some, the essence of life would be pleasing God Almighty. For some, essence or the purpose of life would be having a family, for example. Many people will give you different types of answers regarding the reality and the essence of life. We say, well, let's talk about maut. If maut has existence, what is the essence of maut? Here, we would not be able to respond because you and I have not encountered maut yet. You and I have not felt maut yet. Now, some may have felt it, but they came out of it, for example. But even those who came out of it, they don't know what it is feel like to be dead, for example. Maut is something which you and I have not experienced, nor has anyone come back from that life to come and inform us, this is what maut is like. Is there anyone? No. No one. Well, if someone did come back to us to tell us, then we'll be scared as to how did you come back to tell us all of this. But we believe in those personalities who are well aware of the realities of the hereafter that they are aware of the realities of this life. We believe in Soyem Ather. We believe in Ma'asumeen, the infallibles, who made this claim from the mimbar of Rasulullah, Saluni qabla an tafqiduni. Ask before I am no longer amongst you. And then ask me about the pathways of the paradise, because Ali is more aware of the pathways of paradise than he is aware of the pathways of this world. And this is not a claim by Amirul Mu'mineen. You and I, we live here in New Jersey. I'm sure many people are visiting from, I see one person who's visiting from outside, and there are many in the crowd who are visiting from outside. You don't expect them to know the ways of New Jersey because they don't live here. Well, you have this thing called GPS by which you get your way around. But that wasn't always around. So if you're new in a town, you ask for directions. If you want to go from here to another center, you and I live here, we don't need GPS probably. We probably just use GPS to find out where's the traffic and where isn't. But we know the path, we know the ride, we know how to get there. But someone who's new in the town, they will need the directions, or handwritten directions, or printed out directions, or using GPS. But for those who live here, that does not make sense. It's tahsil hasil. Why do you need it? You already live here. You know the ways and the paths of this world. My question is, how is it that Ali ibn Abi Talib, did he live in that reality that he's more aware of the pathways of the paradise than he is aware of the pathways of this world? So here we understand that Ali is another individual, another being for whom these realities were as if he's seeing it in front of him. Someone came and asked one of the Ma'soom a question. Imam responded right away without any delay. He said, Imam, how come you didn't think about it? How come you responded right away? He said, because the answer to it was right in front of me. Imagine if you work at some place and you're expert at that work that you work in. Someone asks you the same question, people ask you the same question 100 times a day. You have the answer ready. Or, Imam gave a better example. He said, extend your hand in front of me. He extended his hand. Imam said, how many fingers do you hold? He said, 5. Imam, how come you didn't think about answering before you looked at your hand? He said, because this is something which is very obvious. I know how many fingers I have. And I don't need to think about it. Imam says this is the same way our knowledge system works. The knowledge that Allah has bestowed upon us, we have more knowledge of the hereafter than we have the knowledge of this world. Salawat biji Muhammad wa alihi. So Allah has created maut and hayat. Maut and hayat, there's a falsafa behind maut and hayat, and to be honest with you, there's not enough time to get into that. And what is more important and applicable is this life that we are spending here. We don't know when, we didn't have a choice when we were born. We don't have in our control when we will die. These are two things that were not in our control, amongst many things that are not in our control. But there is one thing that is in our control. When Allah says, "La tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun," do not die until you are submissive. Not dying is not in our hand, meaning we don't know when our death will come upon us. Suicide is forbidden in Islam. So don't say those who commit suicide, they know when their death is going to be. No, that's haram, it's forbidden. We're talking about the natural death. We don't know. There are many who have gone into coma and they have come out of it. Right? There are many complications people have had and then they have come out of it. So when we don't know when our death will be, and Quran also talks about that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the last ayat of Surah Luqman mentions 5 things which are considered to be ulume maktuma, the hidden knowledge. Number 1, he says, Inna Allaha indahu ilmus sa'a. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the knowledge of the unseen. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the knowledge of the sa'at, meaning the day of judgment. Only He knows when Qayamat will take place. Number 2, yunazzilul ghayth. Allah knows when it will rain and He's the one who brings it down. Number 3, he said, وَيَعْلَمُ مَا فِي الْأَرْحَامِ. Allah knows what's in the bellies and the wombs of the mothers. Number 4, he says, وَمَا تَدْرِي نَفْسٌ بِمَا مَاذَا تَكْسِبُ غَدًا. No soul knows what they will earn tomorrow. وَمَا تَدْرِي نَفْسٌ بِأَيِّ أَرْضٍ تَمُوتُ. And no soul knows when they will die or in which land they will pass away. إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَبِيرٌ عَلِيمٌ. These are the ulum that only belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one else has the knowledge of that. Now bringing you back, inshallah I'll answer these 5 things. Some of you might be questioning, wait a minute. Couple of these things we don't know. But many of these things, humans have progressed to an extent where they know the reality of some of these things. They can gain access to, for example, when it will rain, how much it will rain. They have gained access to what's in the wombs of the mothers. They can tell you that ahead of time, and they are also aware of what they will earn tomorrow. The middle three things, someone can easily question and ask about it. But the reality is that we need to focus more on this life of ours that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us before we start speaking about the maut of ours. Why? If you can bring this reality and shape this reality in a way which is expected of you, then that secondary phase of your life will be at ease. And there are many riwayat from that reference, one of which is from our third Imam, Imam Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. Imam said this, he said, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ الدُّنْيَا حُلْوُهَا وَمُرُّهَا حُلْمٌ. He said, know this, that indeed the world, hulwuha wa murraha, the sweetness and the sourness of this world is nothing but a dream. وَالْإِنْتِبَاهَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ. The reality is the akhirat. That is when you will be awakened. وَالْفَائِزَ مَنْ فَازَ فِيهَا. Successful is the one who's successful in the hereafter, not necessarily in this world. وَالشَّقِيَّ مَنْ شَقِيَ فِيهَا. And of course, the opposite of Sa'id, that means Shaqi, the one who is, oppressor or oppressive or unjust, is the one who will be unjust over there. So Imam mentioned this clearly, that this worldly life of yours is what? Merely a dream. It's nothing more than a dream. You're sleeping in it, and the day you wake up is the day of your maut, for example. That is the beautiful ta'bir that Imam ﷺ explains over here. That you're living in this dream right now. When you wake up, it'll be qayamat. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, when he spoke about death as well, he said, "An-nasu niyamun ghafilun idha matu intabahu." People are heedless because they're in a slumber. They're sleeping, and therefore they're heedless. إِذَا مَاتُوا, when they'll die, intabahu, then they will be awakened. The awakening will be when they die. Meaning what? You're sleeping. Just the same way a person sleeps at night, fearless of anything, in deep sleep. Some of you might sleep 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. Some maybe more, some maybe less. The night sleep, and then you wake up from it. He said, when you wake up from it, that is bedari, that is awakening. That's why Rasulullah said, Mutu qabla an tamutu. This is where you need to pay attention. He said, die before death comes upon you. What does that mean, die before death comes upon you? Well, relate this to the previous hadith. Previous hadith said, people are sleeping. They're in a slumber. Until they wake up, that'll be qayamat. That'll be their death. Then Rasulullah says, die before death comes upon you. Meaning what? Bring that death closer to you. Not meaning that kill yourself. No, that awakening that'll happen at the time of your death, bring that in this life. That's why in Surah Takathur it says, وَلَتَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمِ ثُمَّ لَتَرَوُنَّهَا أَيْنَ الْيَقِينِ. لَتَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمِ is not talking about the hereafter. أَلْهَاكُمُ التَّكَاثُرُ حَتَّى زُرْتُمُ الْمَقَابِرَ كَلَّا سَوْفَ تَعْلَمُونَ ثُمَّ كَلَّا سَوْفَ تَعْلَمُونَ كَلَّا لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عِلْمَ الْيَقِينِ لَتَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمِ. I recited the whole surah so that we can make this point more and more understandable. That there was this rivalry between the groups. Vainglory amongst them. Namely, Aus and Khazraj. They would take pride in things which were irrelevant. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عِلْمَ الْيَقِينِ. Had they had the knowledge of ilmul yaqeen, the science of having this certainty, yaqeen. What is that yaqeen? Yaqeen, in another ayat of Quran mentions, وَعَبُدُ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَاتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. Worship Allah until you reach certainty. Guess what people did? They stopped worshiping after a point. The Sufis, they stopped worshipping. He said, why don't you worship? He said, well, we've reached yaqeen. Quran says, worship until you reach yaqeen. We have, alhamdulillah, reached this level of yaqeen. Now because we are at the level of yaqeen, we don't need to worship according to the ayat of Quran. One of the scholars responded by saying, when you climb up on a hill or when you climb up on a roof, you use this ladder to get up there. But no rational individual throws the ladder away after having reached the top. You need to come down as well one day. So don't throw this ladder away. Keep the ladder with you. وَعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ does not mean worship until you've reached certainty. No, until you have reached death. Here the word yaqeen refers to death. So therefore the words might be different some places. When Allah says, لَتَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمِ, so that they will see Jahim. Jahim is what? Jahim is the hellfire. They will see the hellfire with their own eyes. Of course, you and I don't want to be the ones who want to see the hellfire with our own eyes. But this ayat is not talking about after Qayamat. Pay attention. This ayat is talking about seeing the Jahannam right here. Having the foresight, having the insight, having the basirat to be able to see Jahannam right here in this land. Why? Because if you see it over there, everyone will get to see it. In min illa huwa wariduha. There's not a soul which will not enter Jahannam. Everyone will, except those who are bound to paradise, they will go to the paradise. But you and I, inshallah, who are bound to heaven, we will also take a look at those who are suffering in Jahannam. So seeing Jahannam in the Qayamat is not a big skill. Seeing Jahannam over here is the skill. To be able to see it and then to be able to refrain from it. Because that only serves as that point for you to take heed about it. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Surah Luqman, I mentioned those ayat. I don't want to bring them in, but it's in, so let's explain quickly. So, Inna Allaha indahu ilmus sa'a. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the knowledge when Qayamat will take place. Only He knows when the day of judgment is. Only He knows when resurrection is. No one has the knowledge of the sa'ah. In fact, ma'asumeen, infallible imams and prophet, when they were asked about this question, they also refrained from answering. To the extent the ayat of Quran says when Rasulullah was asked by the polytheists, or even sometime when he was asked by the mu'mineen, when will Qayamat take place? Rasulullah said, in adri, I don't know. This is the ayat of Quran. But interestingly, when a person came and asked Rasulullah, oh Rasulullah, when will Qayamat take place? Mata as-sa'a. These are the words of the riwayat. Rasulullah, instead of responding, he said to the man that, what have you done for that sa'a? Ma addaytat lis-sa'a. What have you prepared for that sa'a? That man said, I became ashamed that I have not prepared anything for the sa'a. He said, then why are you so curious about when this sa'at will take place? When you're not even prepared for it. Why are you so worried? You're usually prepared for something which you are anticipating. When you come to a majlis, you say, when will majlis start? So, abhi to Quran khani ho rahi hai. When will majlis start? Abhi to hadith kisa ho rahi hai. When will majlis start? Well, majlis has started already. The moment we started reciting Quran, majlis had begun. Well, we don't realize that fact. We think that majlis only means when the alim sits on the mimbar. I guess that's what the tabadur zahni is, that when will majlis start? Meaning, has the Maulana sat on the mimbar yet? He said, what have you done for this majlis that you're so worried when will it start? You are here. You made effort to come here, to attend this majlis. So you have all the right in the world to question this. Especially if you've been sitting here since 6 o'clock. Then you have all the right in the world to ask, when will majlis start? I've been here since the beginning of the time. But the one who has not prepared anything for the hereafter, there's no question. Why are you even questioning when will Qayamat take place? What have you gotten ready for it? What have you prepared for this Qayamat? So that man became ashamed. He said, Rasulullah, ma addaytu min siyamin was salat. I have not prepared much or accumulated much in the form of Sawm and Salat, meaning fast and the prayers. But I have one thing with me which I'm very proud of, and that is the hubb of Allah and His apostle Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. Rasulullah smiled and said to that man that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises that He will raise you with the one whom you love. He will raise you with the one whom you love. So if you love your apostle, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise you with your apostle. But at the same time, you cannot love Allah, the apostle, and hate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? It doesn't make sense. You need to have love for both. The ayat of Quran says what? It says, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي. Prophet said, if you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then follow me. You cannot say, well, I love Allah, but I'm not going to follow the Prophet. That's an oxymoron. That does not work. You either do this or you don't. When you love Prophet, when you claim to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that means you have to do what is called the Pairavi and Ittiba'i Rasul, following the path of Rasul. And then Rasulullah said, Man kuntu mawla fa aliyun mawla, ana madinatul in wa aliyun babuha. If you believe in Rasulullah and you do the Pairavi and the following of Rasulullah, then you have to follow Ali ibn Abi Talib as well. Because Rasulullah said, ana madinatul ilm. I am the city of knowledge, and Ali is the door of that city. So therefore, if you believe in Rasulullah, in order to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you need to believe in Ali as well. And if you believe in Ali, you have to believe in all those who come after Ali as well, because Rasulullah said, Husaynun minni wa ana min Husayn. Husayn is from me and I am from Husayn. Man ahabba Allah faqad ahabba Husaynan. Whoever loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indeed loves Husayn ibn Ali alayhi salatu wassalam. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So you can't say that I love Rasul, I love Allah, but I'm also fond of those who fought against Rasulullah. You can't say I love Ali, hamari jaan qurban Ali pe, but I am also fond of the one who was standing against Ali in Siffin. You can't say, well, I love Hussein according to this hadith of Rasulullah, but I do not disassociate myself with those who were standing up against Hussein in Karbala. This is where hypocrisy comes into play. So let me clarify those ayat. Allah has the ilm of sa'ah. Allah has the knowledge of the day of judgment. No one else does. So well, that part we agreed. We don't have any issue with that. Let Allah have that knowledge. We don't have that knowledge. Even Anbiya said they don't know about it. But the next two and next three are where the problem is. Allah says, وَيُنَزِّلُ الْغَيْثِ. Allah is the one who sends the rain. And it is also translated that Allah is the one who knows when it will rain. You say, well, hold on a second. Alhamdulillah, science and technology has progressed that they're able to tell you to the second when it'll start raining and when it'll stop. Right? These apps nowadays that you have says in 10 minutes it'll start raining, in 15 minutes it'll stop raining. It's a passing storm, for example. They know exactly how bad or severe this storm is, how much rainfall there will be. There comes flood advisories and flood warning and all that stuff. So how is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, only He knows when it will rain? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not use the word matar. There are two words that are used in Arabic for rain. One is ghayth, one is matar. Allah did not say yunazzilul matar. Matar is any type of rain. Ghayth comes from ghawth, comes from istaghatha, from ghiyath, which means something which is beneficial. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the rain that will be beneficial when that rain will come upon you. No one else can predict that this rain is beneficial or this rain is going to be harmful. That knowledge only belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number three, He said, وَيَعْلَمُ مَا فِي الْأَرْحَامِ. Only Allah knows what's in the wombs of the mothers. I said, hold on a second. We can predict what's in we can tell you the gender of the baby. You didn't pay attention. Allah did not say, وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْحَامِ. He said, وَمَا فِي الْأَرْحَامِ. Those who speak Arabic or understand that much, there are two words in Arabic, man and ma. Man is used for human beings. Ma is used for non-living things. You don't say to a person, ma anta, what are you? That will be, disrespectful. You say, man anta, who are you? Someone knocks on the door, you don't say, ma anta. Well, it's got to be a human who's knocking on the door. You say, man anta, who are you? Allah did not say, وَيَعْلَمُ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْحَامِ, that Allah knows who is in the wombs. He said Allah knows what is in the wombs. And so what does that mean? It means Allah knows the character of the child. The gender you can figure out. Allah knows the character of the child. If the child is going to be generous, if the child is going to be, miserly, if the child grows up to be, of character of taqwa and piety, or if he's going to be of the opposite characters. And Allah only knows this child is bound to heaven or this child is bound to hell. That knowledge no one has, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala possesses that knowledge. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. وَمَا تَدْرِي نَفْسٌ بِمَا تَكْسِبُ غَدًا, and no soul knows what they will earn tomorrow. This could be debated as well. And lastly, وَمَا تَدْرِي نَفْسٌ بِأَيِّ أَرْضٍ تَمُوتُ, and no one knows in which land they will be buried. He said, well, we may not know in which land you and I will be buried. But that is not true for Amir al-Mu'mineen. That is not true for Hussein ibn Ali. Didn't Imam Hussein predict? Wasn't he informed ahead of time the land is Karbala? Isn't when Imam arrived in Karbala, did he not say, Ha huna, this is the place where we will be martyred. This is the place where our children will be slaughtered. This is the place where our blood will be shed. Imam knew it. Or Amir al-Mu'mineen, in the beginning of the month of Ramadan, 40th year after Hijrah, Imam starts questioning his children. What day is it today? How many days of Ramadan have passed? How many days of Ramadan have remained? Wallahi, Rasulullah has informed me that this is the month in which I will be martyred. So then you say, well, there's an exception to the law. That not all know, but some people know when they will be killed, where they will be buried. Of course, that is the case. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ilm mutlaq, the absolute ilm of ghaib, but He can give it to whomever He wishes. Amongst those individuals is Masumeen alayhimus salatu wassalam. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bringing you back to the original ayat. الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ. This word yabluwa is very important. The word yabluwa comes from bala, meaning test and trials. Allah created life and death to test you, to put you through a trial, to put you through tribulation. Not a single person sitting over here, aside from maybe the toddlers and the young ones, who can say that I have not ever faced any trials or tribulation in my life. We've all gone through it. And we all will go through some more challenges in our life. There's no running away from it. There's no one who can say that alhamdulillah, everything has been fine in my life. Well, good, you're saying alhamdulillah. But there's always been challenges in your life. You've always been tested. Sometimes you're tested with food. Sometimes you're tested with fear. Sometimes you're tested with your wealth. Sometimes you're tested with your children. Sometimes you're tested with your own souls. As the ayat of Quran says in 155 of Surah Baqarah, that indeed we will test you with some of these things. من الجوع والخوف والنقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات. We'll test you with your fear. We'll test you with food. We'll test you with your wealth. We'll test you with your children. We'll test you with your own souls. All of these are different types of tests that are mentioned in Quran for us. Some of us may have gone through some of these. Allah may have tested some of us through our wealth. Allah may have tested some of us through our children. Allah may have tested us with our own lives and with our own souls. To what extent are we able to stand up? This is where, because it's Muharram as well, Imam stands in the plains of Karbala and Imam speaks freely. Look at the depth of the words of Sayyid al-Shuhada. He said, Inna nas abidud dunya. People are the slaves of the world. وَالدِّينُ لَائِقٌ عَلَىٰ أَلْسِنَتِهِمْ. And the religion is merely utterance of their tongues. As long as their livelihood is in check, they're all good. إِذَا مُحِّسُوا بِالْبَلَىٰ قَلَّ الدَّيَّانُونَ. The moment they are tested with some trial and tribulation, you'll find very few of them to show their deendari and mutadayyin and religiosity. They'll lose the daman of religion. They'll forget that there is such a thing called deen. There's such a thing which is called code of conduct for us in this life that we have to abide with. What is deen? Deen is ahkam, aqaid, and akhlaq. That's what the name of deen is. Ahkam are the do's and don'ts. Aqaid are your beliefs. And akhlaq is your character with those who are in your surrounding. That's what deen is. Imam said, the moment you're tested in this life, قَلَّ الدَّيَّانُونَ. Very few are, considered to be mutadayyineen. Very few are religious. And let me give you some examples so that makes more sense. A person is all good when everything is going in their way. But the moment Allah takes something away from them, right away, that point is when you test that individual. Ayat of Quran says, Surah Fajr, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala narrowed down their sustenance. The insan responded by saying, Rabbi ahanan. Allah has disgraced me. When Allah gave him abundantly, he said, Akramani. Allah has honored me. But the moment Allah took it away, he said what? Rabbi ahanan. Allah has disgraced me. Well, He gave it to you. He has all the right in the world to take it away from you. So a lot of time in our lives as well, we're enjoying, we're having this, good moment, and then right away things go south. Things go down. That's when you really test an individual. Luckily, we have examples of Anbiya. I'll give you one or two examples of Anbiya, and inshallah I'll bring you to conclusion. One of the examples that comes and pops in our mind is the story of Job, Hazrat Ayyub alayhi salatu wasalam. Nabi of Allah, an important figure. Quran mentions him. He says, Rabbi inni massaniyal dur, inni massaniyal shaitan. 2 ayat. Oh Allah, indeed shaitan has, made me, or shaitan has caused this to happen to me, or the evil has come upon me. And the story which is related, some of you already know, just for the mentioning for the kids, that Hazrat Ayyub or Job was enjoying a very fruitful life. What are the ingredients of a fruitful life? You have a nice family, you have nice children, you have good children, you have enough wealth to feed your kids and to live a reputable life. You have your own business, you have all of these things. They were all aligned up for Hazrat Ayyub alayhi salatu wasalam. Shaitan said to Allah, Job is, thankful to you because he has everything. If you take these things away from him, he will no longer be thankful. The reason is, that's what the reality of insan is. Insan is thankful as long as everything is there. The moment Allah takes it away, then we become what? We start complaining. Oh Allah, why me? Oh Allah, why this to me? Shaitan did not know that there's a difference between Nabi of Allah and the other human beings. There's a difference between awliya Allah and those who are not awliya. There's a difference between ma'asumeen and ghayri ma'asumeen. So he said, oh Allah, test him. The moment you'll take things away, he will no longer be thankful to you. 17 years, riwayat mentions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused by natural means that his land was confiscated. The tyrant ruler of the time burned down his fasil, for example. His house was brought down. Children passed away. He too developed an illness because of which he had to leave town. People would not come close to Hazrat Ayyub alayhi salatu wasalam. Imagine living a life like this. If it happened for 6 months, you'll go through it. If it happened for a year, you'll bear the pain. But if it happens for 17 years, that's what Hazrat Ayyub went through. But every time Shaitan wanted this to be proven wrong, he was continuously thankful for the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not once in these 17 years ever after suffering from all of these different things. Look at all the different directions these things are attacking him. Life is completely changed. House is taken away. The land that he has was confiscated or burned down. The children died. He himself is inflicted with an illness. All of these are the regular things that you and I go through. Regular in a sense that, bimari and health problems are there for majority of us. House, this and that, it happens sometimes to some people. Sometimes we are good, sometimes we're not. But the point that Shaitan was trying to make, that this Ayub will not be thankful to you once you take all of these things away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala proved him wrong. Hazrat Ayub not only continued to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was actually more thankful after what had happened to him. That's why relating and connecting this to our seventh Imam, Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salatu wasalam as well. 14 years in prison. Right? 14 years in prison. And if anyone who did not deserve to go to prison for even a moment, it was seventh Imam. Of course, he was thrown into prison for the political reasons that the tyrant ruler of the time could not stand Imam roaming around. Worried about his empire by one man who spends his days in the state of fasting and spends his night worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Worried about his empire. Look at the insecurity the king has. So he puts Imam for 14 years in the jail. You know what Imam responded by saying? Instead of complaining, oh Allah, why am I in this dungeon? When am I going to get out of it? I'm here for wrongful purposes. I should be out there. All that stuff. Imam said, oh Allah, I ask you to give me ample amount of time to worship you the way you deserve. You fulfilled my dua and you placed me into this jail and this prison so I can go ahead and pay respect to your ibadat. Because when I'm outside, of course, I have other things to do. When I'm outside, I have to take care of the ummah. When I'm outside, I have to take care of my family. When I'm outside, I have all these other obligations. I rarely find time to only do the wajibat and some mustahabbat. But the fact now that you have thrown me into this prison, looking at half glass full, right? That positive attitude, that because you've thrown me into this jail, it's not a bad deal. In fact, you've given me this favor through which I can worship you better than I could have ever worshipped you. Salawat bhijiye Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam said, Inna Allah idha ahabba abdan ghattahu bil bala. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves his servant, he sends bala and he sends trials and tribulations toward him. So don't worry about it. How you can come out of it in a graceful manner, and that is what is more important. And there are many stories of being thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can you and I be properly thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I'll conclude with this inshallah. Because I want to connect this concept of thankfulness with the concept of shukr that you find in Karbala. Right? There's the shukr that you find in Karbala, being thankful. That how can an insan be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If I ask kids, what are you most thankful for? I have young kids, you have some of you may have young kids, or some will have young grandkids. When they come from school, majority of the time the activities are, what are you thankful for? What do you like about your parents? Stuff like that. The kids would respond, I'm thankful for my parents, and thankful for, all they do for me. And then they'll throw in between, I'm thankful for my toys, and I'm thankful for this, and I'm thankful for that. Of course, being kids, they're going to go ahead and say stuff like that. So different people, different needs, and different ways of thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah said to Hazrat Musa, oh Moses, show gratitude toward me. Hazrat Musa being Ulul Azm Nabi, at that high level and the rank that he possesses, oh Allah, it is impossible to thank you. There's no way that I, as Nabi Musa, who's Ulul Azm, who's Nabi, who's Rasul, who's Imam, can ever thank you properly. Allah said the moment He said that, He said, the fact that you realize your inability to thank me, that is the biggest of the thanks. He said, oh Musa, bring people close to me. He said, oh Allah, how should I do that? He said, remind them of my favors upon them. Tell them all the things that I have done for them. So if I ask the kids, what has Allah done for you? What is it that you're most thankful for? The first thing that should come to your mind is this life, the hayat that Allah has given you. And then the soundness of this life, the health that He has given to you. And then everything else that comes along with it. If you're able to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for each and every single one of those things. And then the best way of thanking, which is mentioned in the words of Imam Ma'soom, is if you utilize the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala properly, then you have definitely thanked Him. Imagine someone moves here and says, I need a room for maybe a month. I have this job over here, I don't want to, rent a place. You say, well, I have a place. My house is big enough, you can, especially if this person is related to you, you can use the room that I have downstairs and, you can live there for a month. I'm not going to charge you either. I'm not going to take any rent from you either. But when I do this favor to this friend of mine or this relative of mine, what is my least expectation? You're not paying rent. You're using this room. What is my least expectation? That you will make sure that the way I have given you this room, you will return it back in the same exact way. The least is expected from you. That you should not go ahead and write on the walls. They should not go ahead and break anything in the room. They should not go ahead and desecrate or disturb anything that is already in place in the room. Leave it as is. That's the least which is expected. You're borrowing it. Return it back in the same way. That's the least expectation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us all of these favors. You know what is least expected? That we fulfill, we perform and use these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to use in properly. The least expectation is to utilize it properly. Forget about all the wonders that you can do with all the things that Allah has given to you. We cannot be as smart as Einsteins who use their minds to go ahead and explore things and discover things. You and I cannot be like other, those nawabigh and geniuses of the world who utilize their senses to be able to produce things for us. Not all of us could be like that. But the least we can do is to use our favors or the favors that God has bestowed upon us properly. That's the best way of thanking Him. Let me connect this with Karbala as we come close. There's an ayat in Quran when the story of Hazrat Musa, Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Ismail, Abraham and Ishmael. You know the story. It's there in Old Testament as well. It's there in Quran as well. Hazrat Ibrahim sees a dream that he's sacrificing his son. He asks his son for his opinion. The son responds by saying, Ya abati if'al ma tumar. Oh my father, do as you've been commanded. You'll find me amongst the sabirin. Pay attention. Hazrat Ismail rather said that you will find me amongst the sabirin. My question to you, when do you do sabr? Sabr means patience. When are you told to display patience and sabr? When you're facing a mushkil, calamity, right? When there's a problem, when there's a calamity, you're told to do what? Sabr. Marhoom passed away a couple of days ago. You went up to the children and you said what? May Allah give you sabr. Why? Because there's a calamity. So may Allah give you sabr and patience to go through this pain. So you give talqeen to people of patience in front of a calamity. So Hazrat Ismail is looking at this sacrifice as a calamity, which, by the way, did not even take place. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was only testing him. Allah removed Hazrat Ismail from there, replaced it with a sacrificial animal. فَدَيْنَاهُ بِالذِّبْحٍ عَظِيمٍ. But we sacrificed, and we considered this to be the great zibh azim. That sacrifice which was not fulfilled on the 10th day of Zulhijjah, it completed on the 10th day of Muharram al-Haram. Night of Ashur, Imam is sitting with his companions. Imam alayhi salatu wasalam turns off the candle that was in the room, and Imam tells the companions to leave. They all remain intact, but Imam puts the chiragh back on again. When Imam sees everyone is still sitting, then Imam recited a khutbah, a sermon. These are the words of the khutbah. Keep in mind sabr of Hazrat Ismail and patience in front of that sacrifice. Look at the words of Imam Hussain. Allahumma inni ahmaduka an akramtana bin nubuwwah. Oh Allah, we are honored that you gave nubuwwat in our family. Wa faqahtana fid deen. You gave us ability to ponder in religion. Wa allamtana al-Qur'an. You taught us Qur'an. Wa ja'alta lana asma'an wa absaran wa af'ida. You gave us the eyes to see, the ears to hear, the hearts to understand. فَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الشَّاكِرِينَ. Allah, tomorrow in front of that, make us amongst those who are gracious and grateful servants of yours. Imam knows tomorrow everyone will be sacrificed. Imam knows that shahadat will take place tomorrow. There's no doubt about in the minds of Imam, as there was in the mind of Hazrat Ismail, that he was replaced. Maybe he did not have this in mind, that he would be replaced. He was thinking that he would be sacrificed. So he thought that to be a calamity, and he considered to be sabr and patience in front of it. But Imam Hussain knows that he will be martyred tomorrow. But what is he? He is displaying shukr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, Allah, make us amongst thankful servant of yours who are ready to be sacrificed tomorrow. See the difference between the two sacrifices? At one place, it's sabr. At the other place, it's shukr. And that's why we see on the plains of Karbala, Imam displayed that level of thankfulness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mentioned that the other day as well. These are the days in which, these are the nights in which Ahl Haram are in Kufa, or they're making their way from Kufa towards Sham. They stayed in Kufa for about a week or so, and then they were rushed to go toward Syria, present-day Syria and Sham. Imam alayhi wasalam, his head was severed on the day of Ashur. It was sent to Ibn Ziyad Mal'un, and the family was then being brought back, was being brought toward Kufa, and riding on these saddles, riding on these horses without any saddles. Forget about the carriages on top of the camels. There are no carriages. There aren't any saddles. They're riding them without any saddles. And this is not a short distance, it's a long distance that these women have to travel. And these young kids have to travel. Zainab must have remembered the time when she was leaving Medina. Everyone was placed over there. Everyone was present. Abbas was there, Ali Akbar was there, Qasim was there. They all helped Zainab Kubra onto her carriage. Imam Hussain was viewing all of this from distance. But then comes the day of Ashur, when they have to ride these camels and these horses. Zainab helped all the women to get up on their horses. But then it was time for Zainab to mount this. She looked toward Furat, and she must have thought of, oh, Abul Fadl Abbas, you were there in Medina, but you're not here, oh Abbas. Zainab mounted herself on top of this horse as they moved toward Kufa. Imam Bimar, Zainul Abidin, has difficulty keeping his balance because of his sickness and his illness. They tie both of his feet so that Imam doesn't fall off. Ajrukum Allah. May Allah give you no sorrow and the grief except the sorrow and the grief of Ahlul Bayt. They arrive in the city of Kufa. The city of Kufa was once the capital of Amirul Mu'mineen. He stayed here for some time. People respected. When 20 years ago this family had come to Kufa, they were all respectful. They were honoring them. They were greeting them as the household of Rasulullah. Look what the 20 years difference has made. Now Zainab and Kulthum, when they enter the city of Kufa, and they're not being honored, there aren't any head coverings, they're riding these without saddle horses, and then on top of that, there are people who are viewing all of this, making a mockery and throwing sadaqat at them. Just imagine how difficult it must have been. Zainab refrained from eating and told the kids to refrain from eating. There was this lady, Habiba, who had served Zainab when she had come 20 years ago. She comes and brings some food and even some veils for the women folk. And she says, before you eat any of this is not sadaqah, by the way. This is for you to eat. But when you eat, ask your children to make dua. He said, oh Bibi, what's your dua? He said, first dua is ask these children to make dua that, oh Allah, do not make my family to be captive like yourselves. The children raised their hands and made the dua. He said, the second dua is, ask Allah that my men in the family are not killed like your men were killed. The little children made the dua. And then the third dua, she said, ask them to make dua that I get to do the ziyarat of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam. Zainab heard that. She said, oh Bibi, how do you know Hussein? She responded that Hussein is my master. I had seen him younger, but I haven't seen him in a while. Zainab said, if you see him, will you recognize? She said, of course I will. I will recognize Hussein. I will recognize his sister Zainab. Zainab removes the hair from her face. She says, oh Bibi, this is your Shahzadi Zainab. You want to do the ziyarat of Hussein? Look on top of that spear. The head of Hussein is up. ألا لعنة الله قوم الظالمين سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إن الله وإنا إليه راجعون. Allah, please accept our ibadah tonight. Allah, we've committed a lot of sins. Please forgive our sins. Allah, give us the tawfiq and ability to follow the footsteps of Masumeen alayhi wassalam. Allah, hasten the reappearance of Waiting Imam. Make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Please recite Surah Fatiha for Marhoom Ather Beg Ibn Manzoor Hassan Beg. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم